The luminous hall wasn't just big. It was the kind of big that made you question whether the architects had any concept of reasonable scale, or if they'd simply decided that subtlety was for species with smaller egos. Floating in neutral space, somewhere between the Andromeda and Triangulum galaxies, the structure gleamed like someone had taken a star and beaten it into the shape of a conference center, which, according to the brochure Lena had skimmed on the shuttle ride over, was pretty much exactly what had happened. Lena stood near the back of the assembly hall, trying very hard to look like she belonged there. She didn't. She was a mid-ranking human diplomat, whose primary qualification for this assignment was being in the office when her boss, Ambassador Hutchins, had eaten something that violently disagreed with his digestive system. The something in question had been a Quellan delicacy that resembled purple custard, and apparently contained a parasite that found human intestines absolutely delightful. So here she was, representing humanity at what everyone was calling the presentation of the impossible. Wearing her second-best suit, because her best suit was still at the cleaners, and wondering if the refreshment table in the corner served anything that wouldn't kill her. The hall itself was packed. And when you're talking about a gathering of hundreds of different species from across known space, packed takes on a whole new meaning. There were beings made of light standing next to beings made of what looked like angry smoke. Creatures with too many limbs mingled with creatures that seemed to be all limbs and nothing else. The translator implant behind Lena's ear was working overtime, turning the cacophony of clicks, whistles, telepathic broadcasts, and what sounded like aggressive humming into something her brain could process. It was giving her a headache. "Attention! Assembled representatives!" a voice boomed through the hall, somehow managing to sound authoritative in 600 languages simultaneously. "The presentation will now commence." The crowd shifted, a wave of anticipation rippling through species that had probably never agreed on anything in their entire evolutionary histories. Lena craned her neck, trying to see over a particularly tall delegate who appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures that refracted light in nauseating patterns. That would be Uxmoth, according to her briefing notes. High Curator of Lost Things, which was apparently a real job title and not something someone had made up after too many drinks. Uxmoth was responsible for cataloging and preserving artifacts from dead civilizations, which seemed like depressing work, but probably had great job security. "For 3 cycles, we have studied the artifact," Uxmoth continued, their voice resonating like wind chimes in a hurricane. "It was discovered drifting in the void between, in a region of space so dead that even background radiation had given up and gone home. The object predates our current galactic cycle. It predates the infinite war. It may, in fact, predate the concept of dating things." Lena suppressed a snort. The translator implant sometimes struggled with metaphor, but she was pretty sure that last bit was accurate. "We have brought representatives from every major civilization, and quite a few minor ones." Uxmoth paused as several delegates made offended noises, "to witness the unveiling. Because this artifact, dear colleagues, is something none of us have seen in our lifetimes. Something that shouldn't exist, but does anyway, which is frankly the most interesting kind of something." The lights in the hall dimmed. Lena felt the air pressure change, a subtle shift that made her ears pop. In the center of the massive chamber, a platform began to rise from the floor, surrounded by a shimmering containment field that bent light in ways that made Lena's eyes water. And there it was, the throne. Calling it a throne felt inadequate, like calling a supernova a bit bright. It was a throne in the same way that a hurricane was a breeze. The thing seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, its edges sharp in some places and fuzzy in others, as if it couldn't quite decide which reality it wanted to fully commit to. The material, if it was material, shifted between colors that Lena was pretty sure didn't exist in normal space. Midnight blue bled into a gold that hurt to look at, which then dissolved into something that her brain kept trying to interpret as the color of forgotten promises. The seed itself was carved, grown, formed, with intricate patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Inscriptions covered every surface, symbols that predated any known language, twisting and flowing like water frozen mid-splash. "Holy hell," Lena muttered under her breath. "Indeed," said a voice next to her. She jumped, turning to find a floating jellyfish-like creature bobbing at shoulder height. Translucent tentacles drifted in a non-existent current, and somewhere in the gelatinous mass, bioluminescent organs pulsed with soft light. "Impressive, is it not? I am Kelip of the Merchant Guilds, and you are the human replacement, yes?" Lena tried not to feel insulted by the phrasing. "Lena, Human Diplomatic Corps. And yeah, I'm the replacement. Lucky me." "Luck is simply probability wearing a fancy hat," Kelip said, which was either profound or nonsense. Possibly both. "I wonder which of us will claim it." "Claim it?" Lena frowned. "I thought this was just a presentation. You know, look, but don't touch. Take some hollows. Write a strongly worded report." Kelip's tentacles rippled in what might have been amusement. "Oh, you really are new to this. Every species here believes the throne might belong to their ancestors. Whoever can prove ownership stands to gain not just the artifact, but the legitimacy that comes with it. Imagine being able to say, your people built something that survived the death of entire galactic civilizations." "Sounds like a great way to start a war," Lena said. "Yes," Kelip agreed cheerfully. "Yes, it does." Before Lena could respond, another voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. This one was deeper, with an edge that suggested its owner had gargled gravel for breakfast and enjoyed it. "Enough spectacle," the voice boomed. "Show us the proof, curator, or admit this is a waste of resources." Lena located the speaker, a massive being with 6 arms, each ending in hands that looked capable of crushing steel. Hoxun, her briefing notes supplied helpfully. Military commander of the Phalanx Collective. Known for being direct, aggressive, and having exactly 0 patience for what he considered bureaucratic nonsense. Uxmoth's crystalline form chimed with what might have been irritation. "Commander Hoxun, as always, your patience is an inspiration to us all. By which I mean you have none, and it's exhausting." A ripple of laughter, or the alien equivalent, spread through parts of the crowd. Hoxun's expression, insofar as Lena could read it, didn't change. "The throne," Uxmoth continued, "was supposed to recognize its creators, or rather, their descendants. According to the preliminary scans, it contains some form of identification protocol. When the rightful inheritors approach, it should react." "Should?" Hoxun seized on the word like a predator spotting weakness. "You mean you don't know?" "I mean," Uxmoth said with exaggerated patience, "that we're dealing with technology older than most of our star systems. Should is the best we can do without actually testing it, which is why you're all here, so we can test it. Do try to keep up, Commander." Lena was starting to like Uxmoth. "We will proceed in order of galactic seniority," Uxmoth announced. "The eldest collective will approach first." A delegation of beings that looked like ambulatory trees shuffled forward. They moved with the kind of slow dignity that came from being one of the oldest spacefaring species in known history. Their representative, whose name Lena's translator rendered as something like "whisper of autumn leaves, but make it ominous," approached the throne with reverence. The throne did absolutely nothing. No glow, no hum, no mystical recognition. It just sat there, looking expensive and old and completely indifferent to the ancient tree being standing in front of it. Whisper of autumn leaves. But Make It Ominous retreated, looking disappointed in a way that transcended species barriers. "Next," Uxmoth called. One by one, representatives approached. The crystalline hegemony, the void swimmers, the hive of infinite thought. Species after species, each with their own reasons for believing the throne might be theirs, each walking away empty-handed. The throne remained stubbornly inert. Lena found herself getting bored. She'd shifted her weight, from foot to foot, approximately 600 times. She'd counted the number of different species present. She'd gotten to 83 before losing track. She'd contemplated the refreshment table again and decided that nothing there looked worth the risk of spending the next 3 days in a bathroom. She'd even started filing her nails with the edge of her datapad, which was probably not what the device was designed for, but worked surprisingly well. "This is pointless," Hoxton declared after the 30th failed attempt. "The artifact is broken, or the curator's theory is wrong, or this entire gathering is an elaborate prank." Or, Kelep suggested, their tentacles swaying thoughtfully, "none of our species are the right ones. Perhaps the throne's creators are extinct. Perhaps they ascended to a higher plane of existence. Perhaps they got bored and left the galaxy entirely." "Perhaps," Uxmoth said, and Lena could hear the frustration creeping into their chiming voice. "We should continue the testing before jumping to conclusions." That's when it happened. A particularly pompous ambassador from the sovereignty of eternal light was in the middle of a grandstanding speech about how his people's ancient texts definitely, absolutely, without question, described a throne exactly like this one, and therefore it obviously belonged to them, and really, everyone else should just acknowledge their claim and save time. The throne moved. It was subtle at first, a slight rotation, maybe 5 degrees, a shimmer in the air around it, like heat haze on a summer road. The inscriptions on its surface seemed to pulse, once, twice, with a light that was there and gone so fast that Lena almost thought she'd imagined it. But she hadn't imagined the direction it had turned. Away from the pompous ambassador, toward the back of the hall, toward her. The murmur of the crowd died like someone had hit a mute button. Hundreds of eyes, and eye equivalents, turned in her direction. Lena looked up from her nails, suddenly aware that something had changed. "What?" she said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "Did I do something?" The throne rotated another few degrees, definitely, unmistakably, pointing at her. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," Lena muttered. Uxmoth's crystalline form practically vibrated with excitement. "The human. It's responding to the human." "Impossible," Hoxton growled. "Humans have barely left their own star system. They're infants on the galactic stage." "And yet," Kelep observed, floating closer to Lena with what felt like entirely too much interest, "the throne disagrees with you." Lena held up her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of, "I have no idea what's happening. Look, I'm just here because my boss ate bad custard. I don't know anything about ancient thrones or lost civilizations. I'm from Ohio. We're known for corn and a frankly unreasonable number of astronauts, but not for—" She gestured, vaguely at the throne. "Whatever this is." The throne pulsed again, brighter this time. It shifted another few degrees, its orientation now unmistakably locked on Lena's position. Fascinating, Uxmoth breathed. Human, approach the artifact, slowly. I'd really rather not, Lena said. I must insist. And I must insist that this is a terrible idea that will end badly for everyone, but especially for me. Hoxton's 6 arms crossed in a gesture that looked threatening in any language. If the human has tampered with the artifact? How? Lena interrupted, her patience finally snapping. How would I have tampered with it? I've been standing in the back of the room filing my nails for the past 2 hours. I didn't even want to be here. I wanted to be home, on Earth, watching bad television and eating food that doesn't try to eat me back. But no, Ambassador Hutchins had to try the purple custard, and now I'm apparently being accused of what, exactly? Hacking an ancient throne with my mind? Using my incredible human superpowers of being confused and underpaid? The throne pulsed again, stronger this time. The light from the inscriptions spread across its surface like wildfire, and for a moment, just a moment, Lena could have sworn she heard something. Not a sound, exactly. More like a feeling, a whisper at the edge of her consciousness. A question. Why? Why is it doing that? Lena asked, and she genuinely wanted to know. Seriously, why? What did I do? The throne blazed with light, bright enough that delegates shielded their eyes or their eye equivalents. The containment field around it flickered, struggled, and then stabilized. And in the stunned silence that followed, Uxmoth began to laugh. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes being thrown down a staircase, but it was definitely laughter. Oh, the curator said. Oh, this is going to be interesting. The council chamber they'd moved her to was smaller than the main hall, which meant it only felt like being inside a cathedral instead of inside an entire planet. Lena sat in a chair that had been hastily requisitioned from somewhere, probably because nobody had anticipated needing furniture for a human who was supposed to be a background character in this whole affair. Across from her, arranged in a semicircle that felt deliberately intimidating, sat Uxmoth, Hoxton, Keliep, and about a dozen other delegates whose names Lena hadn't caught and honestly didn't care to learn. The throne sat in the center of the room, still glowing faintly, still oriented toward her like a particularly persistent stalker. Let's start simple, Uxmoth said, their crystalline form refracting the throne's light into rainbow patterns on the walls. Your full name, your homeworld, and your lineage going back at least 5 generations. Lena, Earth. And I have no idea about my lineage because my family tree is less carefully documented, and more, we think great-grandma might have been from Poland, but nobody's really sure. Lena rubbed her temples. Look, I don't know what you want me to say. I'm nobody special. I got a degree in interspecies relations, I passed the diplomatic corps exam on my 2nd try, and my most notable achievement is successfully not starting an incident at the Proxima trade negotiations last month. Humans, Hoxton said, making the word sound like an accusation, have been in space for what? 50 of your years? 60? Closer to 80 if you count the really early stuff, but sure, we're the new kids. I'm aware. And yet the throne responds to you. Hoxton leaned forward, all 6 arms tensing. Explain that. I literally cannot, Lena said. That's what I've been trying to tell you. I don't know why it's doing this. Keliep drifted closer, tentacles swaying thoughtfully. Perhaps it's genetic. Some dormant marker in human DNA that matches the throne's creators. We've scanned her, another delegate said, something that looked like a floating brain in a jar, which was exactly as unsettling as it sounded. Her genetic structure is unremarkable, standard human baseline with some minor variations that are completely normal for her species. Technology, then, Hodgson suggested. Hidden implants, covert human engineering. Also scanned for, Brain in a Jar replied. She has a standard translator implant and a medical monitor. Both are off-the-shelf models. Nothing that could interface with the throne. Uxmoth made a sound like glass spells being gently tapped. Then we're missing something. The throne doesn't respond randomly. It was designed with purpose. Maybe it's broken, Lena offered. I mean, it's older than dirt. Older than most dirt. Maybe it's just malfunctioning and I happen to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The throne pulsed, and Lena could have sworn it felt offended. It's not broken, Uxmoth said firmly. I've studied enough ancient technology to know the difference between malfunction and intention. This is intention. Great, Lena muttered. The ancient throne has intentions. That's not ominous at all. They ran more tests. They had her walk around the room while monitoring the throne's orientation. It tracked her like a sunflower following the sun. They brought in other humans from the diplomatic delegation. The throne ignored them completely. They had her touch various objects, recite passages from human literature, even sing a song, which was humiliating and accomplished nothing except making Hodgson look like he wanted to throw her out an airlock. Hours passed. Lena was tired, hungry, and rapidly losing what little patience she'd started with. This is ridiculous, she finally snapped, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You've poked me, prodded me, scanned me, and made me sing show tunes from a musical about cats. Cats! And you're no closer to an answer than when we started. Sit down, Hodgson ordered. No, Lena said, surprising herself with her own vehemence. I'm done. You want to know why the throne is doing this? Fine. Here's a wild idea. Maybe stop treating it like a prize to be won, and start asking what it actually wants. The throne blazed with light, so bright that everyone in the room flinched, except Lena, who was too angry to care. Maybe, she continued, her voice rising, it's not about who made it. Maybe it's not about ownership or lineage or who has the oldest claim. Maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, it's about something else entirely, something you're all too busy fighting over it to actually consider. The inscriptions on the throne's surface began to move, flowing like liquid mercury, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Uxmoth's voice was barely a whisper. It's responding to her words. What did you say? Kelep asked, floating closer to Lena. What did you just say? Lena blinked, her anger deflating into confusion. I don't know. I was just frustrated. I asked why everyone was so obsessed with claiming it instead of understanding it. The throne pulsed again, and this time, everyone in the room felt it. A vibration that resonated in their bones, their exoskeletons, their crystalline matrices, whatever they had. And in that moment, Uxmoth understood. It's not a genetic lock, the curator said slowly. It's not technological. It's philosophical. The revelation hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Philosophical. The word seemed to rearrange everything, turning the entire investigation on its head. Philosophical, Hodgson repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. You're telling me this throne, this artifact worth more than entire star systems, responds to philosophy? Not just philosophy, Uxmoth said, their crystalline form chiming with excitement. Intent, perspective, the way someone thinks about power itself. They turned to Lena, light refracting through their body in dizzying patterns. You questioned the premise. Everyone else approached the throne asking, "Is this mine?" You asked, "Why does everyone want to own it?" "I was just annoyed," Lena protested. "Exactly," Caleb said, their tentacles practically vibrating. "You weren't trying to claim it. You were questioning the entire concept of claiming it." Hoxton made a sound like grinding metal. "This is absurd. Objects don't care about philosophy. They respond to their programming, their design parameters. And what if questioning ownership was the design parameter?" Uxmoth moved closer to the throne, studying the shifting inscriptions with renewed focus. What if the creators built something that would only respond to beings who approached it, without the desire to possess it? "That's a terrible design," Hoxton said flatly. "What's the point of creating something powerful if you make it impossible to use?" "Maybe that was exactly the point," Lena said quietly. She was staring at the throne, watching the inscriptions flow and reform. Something about the patterns felt almost familiar, like a word on the tip of her tongue. Maybe they didn't want it to be used. Maybe they wanted it to teach something. The throne pulsed again, gentler this time, almost approving. "The inscriptions," Uxmoth said suddenly. "We've been trying to translate them as a language. But what if they're not linguistic? What if they're conceptual?" "Can you read concepts?" Lena asked. "With the right framework, perhaps." Uxmoth's form shimmered as they accessed some internal database. "We need linguists, philosophers, historians who specialize in dead civilizations. And we need them now." The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. The council chamber transformed into an impromptu research center. Scholars from a dozen species crowded around the throne, arguing in multiple languages while their translator implants worked overtime. Holographic displays filled the air, showing comparative analyses of the inscriptions against every known ancient language. Lena found herself pushed to the side, which was fine with her. She was exhausted, and someone had finally brought food that wouldn't kill her, a bland nutrient bar that tasted like cardboard but was technically edible. She was halfway through her second bar when Kelpie floated over, their bioluminescent organs pulsing in what might have been concern. "You should rest," the merchant said. "This could take days." "I'm fine," Lena lied. "Besides, apparently, I'm the throne whisperer now. Wouldn't want to miss the big revelation." "You don't sound thrilled about that." Lena laughed, a short, tired sound. "Thrilled? I'm terrified. Do you know what happens to humans who get involved in things way above their pay grade? Nothing good. We have stories about it. Lots of stories. They usually end with the person either dead or wishing they were dead. Your species has a pessimistic narrative tradition. Our species has a realistic narrative tradition," Lena corrected. "We've been the underdogs for our entire history. You learn to expect the worst." Calip's tentacles swayed in a thoughtful pattern. "And yet you're still here, still helping. What else am I going to do? Go home and pretend this didn't happen?" The throne literally pointed at me in front of hundreds of witnesses. "I'm committed now, whether I like it or not." "That," Caleb said, "might be the most human thing I've ever heard." Before Lena could respond, Uxmoth's voice rang out across the chamber. "We have something. Everyone, please, your attention." The crowd of scholars parted, revealing the throne. The inscriptions were still moving, but now they were being projected onto a massive holographic display, broken down into component symbols and cross-referenced against thousands of linguistic databases. "We've been approaching this wrong," Uxmoth announced. "The inscriptions aren't a single language. They're a composite. fragments from hundreds of different civilizations, all woven together. It's not meant to be read linearly, it's meant to be understood holistically. Can you translate it or not? Hoxton demanded. We can try. Uxmoth gestured, and the holographic display shifted, symbols rearranging themselves into something that almost looked like sentences. The translation is rough, and we're filling in gaps with educated guesses. But here's what we have. The display flickered, and words appeared, rendered in a dozen languages simultaneously, so everyone could understand. We who built empires on the bones of lesser species. We who claimed the stars as our birthright. We who believed power was proof of worth. We fell. Not to enemies, but to ourselves. Pride consumed us. Ambition blinded us. We conquered everything and learned nothing. The chamber had gone silent. Even Hoxton seemed subdued. The translation continued, "This throne is our legacy and our warning. It will not serve those who seek to rule. It will not answer those who claim ownership. It will only respond to those who question why anyone should rule at all. If you have found this, if it has chosen you, then perhaps you are ready to learn what we learned too late. Power is not a prize to be won, but a burden to be questioned." Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. They destroyed themselves. "It would appear so," Uxmoth said softly. "The civilization that built this throne, they were conquerors, imperialists. They spread across their galaxy, subjugating other species, claiming everything they touched. And eventually, they turned on themselves. The throne is all that's left." "A warning," Kelip murmured. "They left a warning." "More than that," Uxmoth said. "They left a test. The throne was designed to find species, or individuals, who had the wisdom they lacked, who could look at power and question it instead of grasping for it." Hoxton's 6 arms were crossed tightly against his chest. "And the human passed this test by accident." "Not by accident," Uxmoth corrected. "By nature. She approached the throne without desire for it. She questioned our motives instead of asserting her own. That's what the throne was waiting for." "So what now?" Lena asked. Her voice sounded small in the vast chamber. "What does it want from me?" "There's more," Uxmoth said, gesturing at the display. "The final section of the inscription. It's difficult to translate. The concepts don't map cleanly onto modern languages." "Try," Lena said. The display shifted again, new words appearing. "To the one who questions, we offer knowledge. The sum of our civilization, our history, our mistakes. Technology that could reshape galaxies. Wisdom purchased with the blood of billions. It is yours if you choose to accept it. But know this, accepting our legacy means accepting responsibility for ensuring it is never misused. You will become the guardian of our sins. You will carry the weight of our failures. Choose wisely." The chamber erupted into chaos. Technology that could reshape galaxies? Hoxton was on his feet, all 6 arms gesturing emphatically. "That knowledge belongs to the galactic community, not to one individual." "The throne chose her," Kelliop pointed out. "By its own design, the knowledge is hers to claim." "Unacceptable," another delegate shouted. "Humans are too young, too inexperienced, too dangerous," someone else added. "Give them that kind of power, and they'll become exactly what the throne's creators were." Lena listened to them argue, watched them descend into accusations and counter-accusations, and felt something shift inside her. A clarity, cold and sharp. "Stop," she said. Nobody heard her. "Stop," she said again, louder. The arguing continued. "Stop," Lena shouted, and this time The throne amplified her voice somehow, making it boom through the chamber like thunder. The silence was immediate and absolute. Lena took a breath, trying to organize her thoughts. You're all doing it again. Fighting over who gets to control it. Who has the right to claim it? You learned nothing from the translation. The human is right, Oxmoth said quietly. Of course I'm right, Lena snapped. The throne literally just told us it was built by a civilization that destroyed itself through exactly this kind of thinking. And your first instinct is to do the same thing. It's like watching someone step on a rake and then lining up to take your turn. Then what do you suggest? Hoxton asked, his tone challenging. Lena looked at the throne, at the flowing inscriptions, at the ancient warning left by beings who had learned wisdom too late to save themselves. She thought about Earth, about humanity's own bloody history of empires and conquest, and the slow, painful lessons learned from countless mistakes. I suggest, she said slowly, that the knowledge doesn't belong to anyone. Not to me, not to humanity, not to any single species. Explain, Uxmoth said. The throne's creators wanted someone who would question power, right? Well, here's my question. Why should anyone have exclusive access to this? Why should it be hoarded instead of shared? Lena gestured at the assembled delegates. You're all terrified of what would happen if one species controlled this knowledge. So don't let that happen. Make it a coalition, a shared archive. Every species gets access, but no species gets to weaponize it. Impossible to enforce, Hoxton said immediately. Difficult to enforce, Lena corrected. Not impossible. You'd need oversight, checks and balances, probably a whole new bureaucratic nightmare, but it's better than the alternative. Which is? Calliope asked. Which is me taking the knowledge and humanity becoming exactly what the throne's creators were. Or you taking it by force and proving you learned nothing. Or the throne staying locked forever because nobody can agree on who deserves it. Lena met Hoxun's gaze. Those are your options. Pick one. The throne pulsed, and for a moment, Lena felt something. Not quite a voice, but an impression. Approval, maybe, or recognition. The test wasn't just about questioning power. It was about what you did with it, once you had it. The human proposes shared stewardship, Uxmoth said, their tone thoughtful. The knowledge preserved in neutral space, accessible to all, controlled by none. It would require unprecedented cooperation, Kelliepp observed. Yes, Lena agreed. It would. And maybe that's the real test. Not whether one person or one species is worthy, but whether all of us together can be better than the civilization that built this thing. Hoxton was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he uncrossed his arms. I don't like it. I'm not asking you to like it, Lena said. I'm asking you to think about what happens if we don't do it. The Phalanx Collective will need guarantees, security protocols, verification systems. Fine, we'll build them. The merchant guilds will want economic considerations addressed, Calliope added. Also fine. Uxmoth's crystalline form chimed softly. This will take time, negotiation, compromise. Good thing I'm a diplomat then, Lena said. She was exhausted, terrified, and pretty sure she'd just committed herself to years of the most complicated negotiations in galactic history. But the throne had stopped glowing quite so insistently. It sat there, ancient and patient, waiting to see if they could actually pull this off. The negotiations took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of arguments that made Lena's previous diplomatic assignments look like casual coffee chats. 3 weeks of species who had been enemies for centuries having to sit in the same room and agree on something. 3 weeks of Lena surviving on terrible coffee, worse sleep, and the growing realization that she'd somehow become the linchpin of the most important agreement in modern galactic history. No pressure. The luminous hall had been transformed into a proper negotiation center, with delegations camped out in various sections, holographic displays showing proposed frameworks, and enough legal documents to fill a small moon. Lena had read approximately none of them in full, because she'd discovered early on that if she tried, her brain would simply shut down in self-defense. Instead, she focused on the big picture. Keep everyone talking. Prevent walkouts. Remind them, gently or not so gently, what the alternative looked like. The throne remained in the center of it all, a constant reminder of what they were negotiating over. It had stopped glowing quite so dramatically, but Lena could still feel it watching, waiting. The Phalanx Collective cannot agree to unrestricted access, Hoxton said for what felt like the 1,000th time. He looked tired, which Lena hadn't thought was possible for someone who seemed to be made of pure stubbornness and military discipline. There must be safeguards against weaponization. We've included safeguards, Lena said, pulling up the relevant section of the proposal. See? Tier-based access. Basic historical and cultural information available to everyone. Advanced technology requires approval from the Oversight Committee. Anything with military applications requires unanimous consent from all member species. Unanimous consent means nothing gets approved, Calliope pointed out. Their tentacles were drooping with exhaustion. One species can block everything. Then maybe that's the point, Lena said. Maybe some things shouldn't be approved. Maybe the whole idea is that we have to be absolutely sure before we use any of this. That's inefficient, Hoxton grumbled. That's safe, Lena countered. Pick one. Oxymoth drifted over, their crystalline form dimmer than usual. Even curators of lost things apparently needed sleep. We're close. The framework is solid. Most delegations have agreed in principle. Most isn't all, Lena said. Most is better than none, Oxmoth replied. 3 weeks ago, the idea of shared stewardship would have been laughed out of the hall. Now we're arguing about implementation details. That's progress. Lena supposed that was true. She rubbed her eyes, trying to remember the last time she'd slept more than 4 hours. What about the throne itself? Where does it stay? Here, Oxmoth said. The luminous hall is neutral territory. We expand it, turn it into a proper archive and research facility. The throne remains as the centerpiece, both literally and symbolically. And who oversees it? A rotating council. Representatives from each member species, serving limited terms. No permanent positions, no concentrated power. Oxmoth's chimes sounded almost amused. You've created a bureaucratic nightmare, you realize. This will be complicated and frustrating and probably inefficient. Yeah, Lena said, but it'll be fair, or as fair as we can make it. The human has a point, Calliope said. Fairness is worth some inefficiency. Hoxton made a sound that might have been agreement or indigestion. The Phalanx Collective will support the proposal, with reservations. I'll take it, Lena said. The final vote happened on a morning that Lena had stopped being able to distinguish from any other morning. Time had become a blur of meetings and negotiations, and increasingly desperate attempts to find food that wouldn't make her sick. The delegations assembled in the main hall, the same space where the throne had first been presented. It felt like years ago instead of weeks. Lena stood near the front, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. Oxmoth presided over the proceedings, their voice carrying through the hall. We are here to ratify the Accord of Shared Stewardship. The throne and its knowledge will remain in neutral space, accessible to all member species under the terms we have negotiated. This is unprecedented. This is, frankly, insane. And yet, here we are. A ripple of what might have been laughter spread through the crowd. "All in favor?" Uxmoth asked. The vote wasn't unanimous. 3 species abstained, citing concerns about security or sovereignty or various other objections that Lena had heard so many times she could recite them in her sleep. But the majority voted yes. The accord passed. The throne pulsed once, a gentle wave of light that spread through the hall like a sigh of relief. Or maybe that was just Lena projecting. "It's done," Caleb said, floating beside her. "You did it." "We did it," Lena corrected. "I just asked the right questions. Everyone else did the actual work." "Don't be modest. It's unbecoming." Lena laughed, surprised she still could. "I'll try to remember that." The throne's inscriptions began to shift, flowing into new patterns. Uxmoth approached it carefully, scanning the changes. "It's unlocking. The knowledge is becoming accessible." "All of it?" Hoxton asked, suddenly alert. "The historical records, certainly. The cultural archives. The warnings and lessons." Uxmoth paused, their form chiming softly. "The advanced technology is still locked. It's waiting." "For what?" Lena asked. "For proof that we can handle what we already have. The throne isn't just going to hand over galaxy-reshaping technology because we signed an agreement. We have to earn it. Show that we've actually learned something." "How long will that take?" "Years, decades, maybe centuries." Uxmoth turned to face the assembled delegates. "This isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning. We have access to the history of a civilization that destroyed itself. Now we have to prove we're smart enough not to repeat their mistakes." The weight of that settled over the hall like a blanket, sobering, daunting, and somehow hopeful. The next few days were a blur of logistics, setting up the oversight committee, establishing security protocols, beginning the massive task of cataloging what the throne was willing to share. Lena was involved in approximately none of it, which was fine with her. She'd done her part. Now she just wanted to go home. She was in her quarters, packing the few belongings she'd brought, when Uxmoth appeared at her door. "Leaving so soon?" the curator asked. "My job here is done. Time to get back to the regular diplomatic work. Trade negotiations, border disputes, the boring stuff." "You could stay, help oversee the archive. You're the one the throne chose, after all." Lena shook her head. "The throne chose me because I didn't want power. Staying here, becoming some kind of guardian or overseer, that feels like missing the point." "Wise," Uxmoth said, "and very human. I'll take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. Uxmoth's crystalline form chimed softly. "The galaxy is going to change because of what happened here. Slowly, probably. Messily, certainly. But it will change." "Good," Lena said. "It could use some changing." She returned to Earth 3 days later, stepping off the shuttle at the Diplomatic Corps headquarters and immediately being swamped with debriefing requests, interview demands, and approximately 6,000 messages from people who wanted to talk to the human who'd somehow negotiated the most important accord in galactic history. Lena ignored all of it. She filed her expense report, which was rejected because apparently preventing a galactic incident wasn't a valid justification for the minibar charges. She wrote a brief summary of events that was immediately classified above her clearance level. And then she went home. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Small, cluttered, comfortable. Her cat, an orange tabby named Potato, glared at her with the special disdain that only cats can manage. "Yeah, I know," Lena said, dropping her bag and collapsing onto the couch. "I was gone too long. The automatic feeder worked fine. Don't give me that look." Potato continued glaring, then apparently decided Lena had suffered enough, and jumped onto her lap, purring. Lena scratched behind his ears and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out in space, an ancient throne sat in a hall of light, holding the secrets of a dead civilization. Hundreds of species were learning to work together, slowly figuring out how to share something that any one of them would have killed for just weeks ago. And she was here, on Earth, with her cat, in her tiny apartment, being aggressively normal. "You want to hear something funny?" she asked Potato, who did not. "I saved the galaxy by asking why. That's it. That's the whole story. Everyone else was fighting over who got the prize, and I just asked why anyone should get it at all." Potato purred louder, unimpressed by galactic politics. "Yeah," Lena said, closing her eyes. "You're right. It's not that impressive when you say it out loud." But somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still feel it, the throne's presence, distant but constant. A reminder that the test wasn't over. It would never be over. Every generation would have to ask the same questions, make the same choice between grasping for power and questioning why power should be grasped at all. Humanity had passed the test this time. The real question was whether they'd keep passing it. Lena decided that was a problem for future Lena. Present Lena was going to order takeout, watch something mindless on television, and enjoy being spectacularly, wonderfully ordinary. At least until the next impossible situation found her, which, knowing her luck, would probably be next month.